could replace your entire door knocking team with this one Facebook ad campaign. And this means no headaches managing reps, no headaches hiring and scaling your door knocking team in order for you to scale your business. None of that. Much more simple, and this one ad campaign replaces all those problems.
I cannot believe this.
And if you don't already know who I am, I'm Cole. I'm one of the co-founders of NCT Media, and we've helped hundreds of roofing companies scale by providing them with thousands of appointments per month for their roofing business through various of the marketing strategies we go over on this channel. So I've seen this firsthand, implementing a marketing system, usually some sort of paid ad campaign, and scaling that and completely replacing door knocking teams. So I'm gonna break this down into 3 parts. First, how this actually works, how a Facebook ad campaign can replace your entire team. Secondly, the offer that converts cold traffic. And third, how to actually nurture this cold traffic in order to give it the same level of quality as a referral, or some of your door knockers, they're meeting face to face, so it's a high quality lead. How can we give it the same sort of warmth and same sort of quality? So first I'm gonna explain how it works, right? So when you have your door knocking team, you have a door knocker, let's say he goes into a neighborhood. He knocks on 100 doors, he gets a couple leads, gets a couple estimates, maybe one turns into a job, if that. Think of him as an ad essentially, right? And now on the ad side, you have your ad. And what your ad does is it goes onto people's feeds, which is essentially similar to knocking on people's doors. So it's gonna go on people's feeds, and it's going to show them what you have to offer. And then if they come in as a lead and they book an estimate, then boom, it's essentially doing the same thing, right? But the difference is, one, you are limited to a human, right? So you have one human that needs to be trained, he needs to be managed, you need to make sure he's happy, keep his morale high, make sure his skills are good, etc., right? And then you have the ad, which is just one ad that you're putting out and you're just running it, right? Like it's way less management required in comparison, right? And then the second thing is just overall efficiency. So the ad, it works for you 24/7. It's not complaining about working too long hours or knocking in the heat, etc. It's not only knocking on 100, 200 doors per day. It could literally knock on hundreds of thousands of doors per day if it wants to, right? So it is way more efficient for you to run ads than you running a door knocking team, right? And cost wise, yes, door knocking is better, but ads are more scalable, right? And you always want to choose the more scalable option, right? Because I could, instead of, when I'm doing door knocking and I need to increase by double, let's say I need to double my estimates, right? I need to double my team, right? I need to double my team, and that's pretty much all you could do. Maybe you could make them a little bit more efficient, but you're pretty much doubling your team, no matter what way you cut it. But with paid ads, you just double the budget, right? And yes, there is certain things you need to do. You probably need to make a little bit more ad creatives, but in comparison, doubling your team and maybe making double the ad creatives and doubling your budget, that is so much easier, right? I could double my ad creatives in hours if I wanted to, right? One day in hours, and it'll last me weeks. It is so much easier. It requires way less maintenance, and it's way more scalable. You can scale it at the flip of a switch, right? So that's essentially how it works. I wanted to make the comparison that an ad is essentially the same as a door knocker, but so much better in so many different ways. The thing with this is, with an ad, you only have 30-ish seconds to sell yourself, maybe 2 minutes to sell yourself on somebody's feed, versus door knocking, you have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, however long it takes, it obviously depends, to sell your company and sell yourself on getting a job done, right? You need to be extremely good at the actual ad side of things, and you need to have an offer, right? Because on the door knocking side, you have time to explain yourself, build trust, build rapport, build that human connection between, the door knocker and the prospect. But with an ad, you only have so long to do that. So you need to have an offer that explains what they're going to get out of, working with you guys in a couple of words. If you're coming from the door knocking world and you haven't ran a paid ad before, you might think like, get a free estimate is a good offer, or maybe it's...
We've been in the roofing business for 25 years, get a free estimate, fill out your information below.
That's not gonna work, right? That's not gonna work, because essentially all they care about is getting a good deal on a roof. They need a new roof, now they just like, how could I get a good deal from a trusted company? That's what they're looking for, right? So how do you do that? You need to have an offer that shows them that they're going to get a good deal, and then you build that trust and you build that rapport, you know, within your ads and pre-call, etc. An offer that we typically like to run is something like maybe save thousands on a new roof. Because now it's like, okay, you know, I'm gonna save thousands on a new roof. That's pretty like obvious why that's enticing. Next is something like get a roof quote starting at, you know, 5,997 or whatever, maybe 7,997. Really depends. We've seen 5,997 work really well. We sell at an extremely high rate still, but some companies who offer, you know, higher ticket roofs and they don't have as good pricing as some of our clients do, you want to raise the price there. And we've had to do that a couple of times as well. And that usually fixes any issue that you get. Maybe you have some sort of objection or you have cheaper people, then you raise that price. So that's essentially how you fix it, and you're still going to get good costs, right? Because most people that are looking for a new roof, they're getting quoted, you know, $20,000 or whatever, right? And if you're saying my quotes are starting at $5,997, then they're going to be like,
oh, I'm likely to get a good deal.
So that pretty much expresses that they're going to get a good deal. And then all you have to do is kind of add those benefits, build trust in your ads. So now they're like, okay, I'm likely to get a good deal from a trusted company, because that's all they care about again, right? And then they're going to fill out their information. You're going to call them. You're going to book the appointment, all that good stuff. Now, the thing is, and like I said, with door knocking, you have 15 minutes to build that rapport, that human connection, right? But with ads, you're not. You're not building that human connection. That's kind of the downside. It's infinitely more efficient than door knocking, infinitely more efficient, right? So even if it was, you know, a situation where the close rates were lower and the show rates were lower, then it would still be worth it, right? But you could get it to be, you know, similar, if not better than door knocking in terms of show rates and close rates. And I'm going to show you how to do this. And we do this in what's called the pre-call process. So there's a couple, you know, of different steps here. First, you have the actual call itself when you book the appointment. Second, you have the pre-call messages. And third, you have what the closer does. Those are the three steps I'm going to break it down into. First is the initial call when you book the appointment. What do you do here in order to build that human connection and in order to, you know, make it similar level quality of something like a referral or something like a door knocked lead? So essentially what we like to do here is we like to, number one, set proper expectations of the appointment. The most common reason somebody no-shows or doesn't close is because of a lack of information. So you want to provide as much information pre-appointment as possible to make not only, you know, make sure they show up, but also to ensure, you know, a high close rate on these leads. So you want to answer as many of these questions as humanly possible on your call. What we like to do is we like to set expectations, not only of what, you know, things are going to look like in terms of pricing and, you know, the job itself, etc., and answer those, you know, common objections. Maybe they have like trust issues with the company. How can we answer that on the appointment setting call? We like to do that indirectly. We don't like to wait for somebody to directly ask a question. We like to answer it beforehand. So that's number one, right? Is setting those sorts of expectations and answering those sorts of questions on that call. But secondly, we like to set the expectation of the actual appointment because we want them to, you know, have extreme clarity of what the actual appointment is going to look like, right? So you need to answer like these questions. Where? You know, is it on the phone? Is it on a Zoom call? Is it on a Google Meet? Is it at their house? Is it at your office? Right? You need to make sure you specify these sorts of things because a lot of these people, they might have never gotten a roof quote before, right? So you need to specify these things in order for them to understand, you know, what's going to happen. Because if they don't know what's going to happen at the time of the actual appointment, they're likely to no-show. Second thing is obviously the date and time of the appointment, right? You want to make sure they know when and where they're going to be somewhere, right? Next thing here is the pre-call messages, so the emails and the text. So what do you want to do here? Again, you want to answer the information that they don't already have, right? Because lack of information leads to uncertainty, and uncertainty leads to no-shows and, you know, people that are going to struggle to close. So you want to answer all this information pre-appointment. So how do you do this? So what you want to do is you want to have your sales reps or you or whoever that is closing over the course of like 50 estimates, I would say. You want to write down what or record. You should record and input it into an AI bot. That's what we do. You want to do that. Record, input it into an AI bot, or maybe you write it down manually, however you want to do it. The most frequently asked questions and the most commonly given objections. If you have those two things, you know exactly what I need to answer pre-call, and then you can implement it into these emails and text messages that you send pre-appointment. appointment, right? And you want to answer those questions, right? So if they don't have that information, then what are they going to do? They're going to look somewhere else for that information, or they're just going to get uncertain and they're going to slowly lose interest over time, again, making them less likely to show and less likely to close, right? So what you want to do is, the appointment's set. They booked an appointment. Their interest is here, right? Every, hour or day that goes by, that interest dwindles, right? So you want to provide them with information that makes their interest go up as time goes on, right? So by the time it's the time of the appointment, they are more likely to purchase, right? And it doesn't extend a long, 7-day, 14-day sales cycle, and you could just close them on spot, right? Because you provided all that information pre-appointment so they could actually make a buying decision. Again, you could use AI for this. It makes things a lot easier, but I would always be sending pre-call emails, pre-call text messages, answering these common questions and objections. So once you've done that, now they're going to, have a lot more trust built with your company. Their questions are going to be answered, and you're almost like a referral type of lead, right? Because they have such high trust with you because you've answered all these questions for them, and hopefully you've sent some testimonials and some proof and some reviews pre-call, so they trust you and they think, okay, these guys can do what they say they can, right? Lastly, how are we going to still get that, one-on-one human connection that you get from door knocking? And that's the closer process. So what do you have your closers do pre-appointment, right? So the things we like to do here is we like to have the closers call and confirm the appointment. We don't want to have a setting team do this. We don't want to have the setter do this. We want to have your closers do this, right? Reason being is because you, number one, build rapport pre-appointment, so it saves time, during the actual appointment, right? So number one there, and by the time you get to the appointment and you're building more rapport, that relationship is much more developed, right? So again, they're more likely to close at the time of the actual appointment. But secondly, building that human connection on the phone with the person you're going to have the appointment with is going to make them feel a lot worse on bailing out of the appointment, right? Because they're bailing on a human, they're not bailing on a company. When people book some shit with a company, they don't give a shit if they no-show it, because it's just like a company that they're bailing on. Like, you don't care, I don't care. Like, nobody really cares, right? Unless you really want something. It's a lot easier to bail on, the appointment. But if your closer calls and builds that connection, says, I'm going to show up at your house tomorrow at 3 p.m., now when they bail, they're bailing on somebody that they built a connection with, which is essentially similar to door knocking. So you're building that same level of human connection. That's one thing that we like to have our closers do. And oftentimes, they won't answer the phone. They might not answer a text message. So another thing that is great to get them to have that connection with you is you send them a personalized video. So if they don't answer your calls and they don't answer your text messages, film a little video, like a 2-minute video of you talking, to them about their situation, talking about what you could do to help them, talking about how this all works, and again, answering those questions, giving that information pre-appointment. That's going to really help build that connection as well, make them feel like they're bailing, on a human and not a company. But also, you're answering those questions, you're providing that information, making them more likely to show. So that's pretty much it. Now you have an offer that attracts, cold traffic. You have the leads, you booked the appointment, and now you're nurturing them to be the same level, if not higher quality, than a door knocked appointment. So now if you do all this, you'll be able to replace your door knocking team with a singular Facebook ad campaign that you could scale so much cleaner, better, easier than your door knocking team ever could. And if you're interested in, learning more about the ads or how we set up our campaigns or whatever, check out some of our other videos, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.